Hey everyone, this is Anton. Some of the publishing details have changed in the episode you're about to listen to. Our special guest, Dana Hammer, her story, Tom the Ghost, is going to be coming out in a different anthology. It's going to be coming out in the binge watching Cure anthology. Look for it late 2018 or early 2019. Welcome to the Genre Hustle, your virtual sci-fi fantasy writers group. I'm Anton.
I'm AP.
I'm Chris.
I'm Lucy.
I'm Carter.
And today we have a very special guest star. Dana Hammer from our writers group is talking about Tom the Ghost, her recently published book, coming out August 2018. So if you're listening to this, it's probably already out on Lady Blue Publishing. So Dana, how did you come to us? You want to give us a little background?
So I started in the group before all of you, actually. Our mutual friend Chelsea invited me to start coming, and at the time I was writing a garbage werewolf book, and I got really good feedback on it, and I put that on the back shelf, and I kept coming because I was getting such good feedback from everybody, and everyone's really talented, and I come all the way up from Anaheim just for you guys.
Wow. Anaheim. It's commitment.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. So we all read Tom the Ghost, which is your novella that's getting published, or by now has been published. Why don't you read a little bit from it?
Sure. All right. Chapter 1. Tom is dead. Tom Wise sat on his camel-colored recliner, slumped and grim-faced, watching Judge Judy. Ever since he died, he wasn't able to do much besides indulge in excessive amounts of daytime television, which wasn't bettering his extremely gloomy mood. As Judy spewed angry word bullets all over an unfortunate man who had neglected to keep records of payments owed, Tom idly wondered what the judge looked like naked and what she looked like when she orgasmed. He imagined that Judge Judy moaned low like a cow when she came. He wondered if she ever had sex with the bailiff in between cases.
Wow.
That's a way to open a story.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm in.
Yeah.
I mean, who hasn't imagined Judge Judy naked and orgasming, right?
No, as a dead person on their couch.
Right.
Yeah.
It's relatable
It's
content.
relatable.
It's a very relatable.
Yeah.
So, first impressions of the book. I loved it. It was really entertaining. It was really funny, obviously. One aspect of it that I really wanted to talk to you about was that I found myself really rooting for Tom as the book went on. Like, you did a great job of making this character so heartbreaking and so
and engaging.
Yeah. I really wanted things to work out for him so
Good.
badly.
I'm glad you were rooting against him.
That was my strongest impression.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, actually. It's a story about a ghost atoning for his sins, but it was about a lot more than that for me. I found it a really relevant piece of writing to our times, and very, very punchy, very catchy. And one of the things that got me the most is how typical Tom's situation is, even though it's written as something that is fantastical. He's essentially just a duck out of water. He's surrounded by people that are not the same as him. He's dealing with problems that he is badly educated and ill-equipped to cope with, and as a result, life is very difficult for him. And I think that it's just a story that is deeply relatable on a human level. So I loved it. Big fan.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. I also found it just a joy to read. The pacing is great. Like, you start with like an amazing hook about Judge Judy getting off, and it just keeps going from there. I thought your use of humor was very effective, and I loved the twist ending, which will not be revealed. So yeah, I thought it was a fantastic story, and yeah.
Yeah, ditto. I mean, what everyone else said is so true. And I think, especially in this opening bit, so in previous episodes, we've talked about first sentences and first scenes and how to hook people. And I think what you did here is so perfect. Tom is dead. So we already know the main character. He's on his couch. He's watching television. So you're setting tone, pace, humor, like all of that just in the bit that you read, which is, craftsman work. So well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got to agree with everyone. And not only that, your author voice is so strong. I mean, I've read other pieces, but especially here.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I know I'm reading Dana, and you've nailed it.
Can I just say I'm really all about the situation where I sit on the couch and people compliment me?
Yeah, it's not a bad feeling, right?
Yeah, if you guys want to have me back, I'll come back
horn one more
anytime. Right. Yeah.
You're going to be back every week.
Any other nice things you'd like to say? Yeah.
Welcome to the compliment.
You're a lovely dresser as well. Your hair looks nice today.
Thank you. Thank you.
So one of the strongest things for me about the book was the tone that you pull off. It's not, although you make it look really easy, I imagine it's challenging to pull off something that is really, it's saying something, it's serious, but at the same time, it's extremely witty. You kind of pitch it in this sort of witty way. Can you talk a little bit about how you create your tone?
Well, I think that I have a tendency to, in general, laugh at horrible things. And so for me, it wasn't actually as challenging as you might think, just because whenever something bad happens, my brain is always going to the, how is this funny? Like, how can I make this funny so I can deal with it? And so I think that's just kind of, I was thinking about someone who is in this situation, socially isolated, super depressed, doesn't have any, friends or family to speak of, and how can I make that funny? So that's kind of how I.
You do. You pull it off very
Yeah, you
well. It
succeeded.
is
Oh, yeah.
super witty throughout. And I think without your take on it, it would be a very dark book. But you juggle that. You juggle that balance really well.
And Tom as a character would be you wouldn't want to follow him because he's not engaging, because the tone, it does keep it lively. And so you don't, even though you feel bad for him, you don't, you want to keep seeing you want to see what happens next.
Good.
So I want to talk a little bit about the theme of the book, which to me is, as Lucy said, this is very much a theme that is relevant to our times. I think a lot of people struggle with isolation. Tom is very much on his own throughout much of this book, and it really drives his worldview and his actions. Can you talk a little bit about what you were thinking as you were writing that? Was this something that you wanted to write about, or did it just emerge as you wrote the book?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about social isolation and mental illness and the consequences thereof. When you don't have a support structure and you're struggling with depression and mental illness, nothing good can come of that. And so that's kind of where I was going with it. And I think that a lot of people, have a lot of darkness going on inside them, and if you don't have people to bring you out of that, it can take a turn for the worse.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think you did a great job showing the dark side of that, mitigated with the humor. It really makes for a read where you're feeling for him quite a bit. You're also laughing at him a little bit and laughing with him, and it's kind of like a little bit of sugar to take the pill, kind of, so to speak.
So I think a lot of people have a situation where we live in a society now where you don't really have to interact with people. You can go to work at your office and sit at your computer, and then go home and sit in front of your TV, and you don't.
Everything's online.
You don't need to go shopping. You can buy everything and have it delivered to you. So I think if you didn't have a little bit of humor, if you didn't have a little bit of something to make that bearable and palatable, then that loneliness wouldn't go on as long as it does. I think that people would be forced to break out of that bubble. But now you're not forced to break out of that bubble. And so that's kind of what Tom has been dealing with.
Right.
So along those lines, the thing that I was really struck with was the subtlety of the book, in that Tom is essentially an unreliable narrator, meaning since we're seeing everything through his eyes and he's dead, we don't know what, as a reader, there's this mystery of what's really going on as opposed to what he's telling us. And the way that you handle that, I think, is really deftly done. It's what I said before, it's well crafted in that you keep going along, but there's these subtle little hints where there's an instant where he goes to see the psychic for the first time, and he says something, and the psychic turns away, and Tom's reaction is, oh my God, she must be in deep thought. And I realized on my second reading, she's turning away to stop from giggling or something. And I realized it's I had to read it on the second turn. I was like, oh, she's laughing at it. But it's if you're just reading it and you're so caught up in the story, you can miss that stuff. And so I think that's that to me that's a true talent to be able to pull that off. Especially, like I said, I think someone said at the top, like he talks. It's all Tom for most of this. So I guess my question is how do you do that balance when you're writing it? How do you keep that subtlety going? Is that completely unconscious? And don't say it's unconscious, because that would make you a true genius.
I am a true genius, and it's all unconscious.
Yeah, I think that definitely speaks to a major strength of the story for me, which is the pacing and the story development. Just the way it unfolds, it's very punchy, but there's so much subtext, like you get the events that are happening to Tom right there on the page, but there's actually a lot of shit going on mentally and even subconsciously to the narrator that you do a really good job of kind of sprinkling. I think it really comes through in the kind of B plot. He has kind of a love story that is very disjointed and kind of told through these letters that he writes. And it's, I think, in my opinion, very well done and very subtle. And that kind of leads me to something that I'm curious about in terms of the process. So this piece, Tom the Ghost, is what I would call a short novella or a long short story. It's about 20,000 words, 70 or 80 pages. And I think that, that's different from how you would structure and write a novel or a short story, both of which I've read from you and are equally awesome. But I'm curious about how your process is writing something of this length, because you really open the story with what I'd call the inciting incident. It opens with Tom is dead right there in the title of chapter 1. And so, I mean, do you find that in like this kind of medium short form, you get kind of some liberties in terms of pacing and...
Yeah, for sure. So originally, this wasn't going to be a novella. This was going to be a full-length novel. But because we are entirely in Tom's head the entire time, and the whole point is he's trying to atone for his past transgressions, I didn't feel like I could sustain that insular point of view for an entire 80,000 words or whatever. So I thought a novella would be better for this particular story, just because I didn't want it to drag on and you to get bored with Tom and his misadventures.
Yes. So you kind of fit the form to the story
yes.
as opposed to the other way around.
Exactly. I didn't set out to write a novella, but I think it works a lot better for Tom.
Yeah, I think you made the right choice. A novella is perfect for this story, which brings me to the next thing I want to talk about, which is sort of related to the theme, the isolation. So, a lot of this is interior monologue. He does have some interactions, for example, with the psychic. Here and there's a couple, but most of it is taking place in his head, and yet you manage to give us a lot of great, detailed stories about Tom's life, but you do it in a way that's not like, well, here's something I remember from '87 or whatever. So I want you to talk a little bit about how you structured it, what techniques you used, the letters and stuff. Just give us a little insight into how you came about those techniques.
I pulled a lot of ideas from just like random stories that I'd heard, and I think I read a story about someone defacing some petroglyphs, and I was like, that seems like
I loved that sequence, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think I was like, that's something that you might feel guilty about doing as an adult. And so I just kind of went and thought about what are some things that you would feel guilty about and feel like you need to atone for. And I didn't want them to be like so heinous that you wind up hating Tom. I wanted them to be like youthful transgressions that anyone might do given the right
Youthful transgressions that just go over the line.
Yeah, I mean things that he should feel guilty about.
Should feel bad.
But it's not like he didn't kill anybody, So I just so I made a list of things that the list was actually a lot longer when I was going to do the full novel, but then I realized we're just going through the same formula over and over again, where he's atoning for one thing, and then he's atoning for the other thing, and then he does the other thing.
So along with that, I wanted to talk also, one of the most moving parts of the book for me, and I think we talked about this a little bit, is Tom's relationship with his neighbor Lorenzo, who he's in love with. We never actually really meet Lorenzo face to face. And as far as I can tell, Tom doesn't really have any real world interactions with Lorenzo, but yet the relationship through the letters that he writes is so heartbreaking and moving. And I wanted you to just talk a little bit about like how that sort of came to you to do it that way.
Well, a lot of the problem with social isolation is kind of this aspect of wasted potential. And I wanted to really bring that out. And I wanted to show that Tom did have potential to be in a relationship. He had potential for love, and he had potential to be a really good boyfriend. And that's something that he regrets now that he's dead, and something that he knows that he missed out on. And I wanted to show him make an effort to really reclaim that part of life that he neglected for so long.
Really well done. I like that part of the book a lot.
So I wanted to ask you more a craft question. Since you're now a published author, I wanted to ask you about the process of going from the idea to a finished draft that gets picked up by a publisher. I mean, how long did that take? What was the process like for you?
I got the idea to write the book, and I started writing it. I think I brought it to critique once or twice, and then I got the idea to shorten it to a novella. And from that point, I think it took me 3 to 4 months to get the first draft. And then I went through and edited a little bit, and then I just started submitting it. It's not that interesting of a story, but that's what
It
happened.
does have a happy ending, though.
And
Yeah.
it's just that easy, everyone.
It's just that easy. No,
Yeah.
it actually got accepted by a couple of different publishers. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Duotrope, but they have, I was using them. So they have like lists of all these different small publishers that you can send stuff to. And for novellas, it's really hard to find a publisher because most, agents and traditional big publishers don't want to publish a novella unless you're Stephen King or somebody. So I submitted it to a few different small publishers. Lady Blue got back to me and said that they wanted to publish it. Really shortly after that, I got another acceptance from Zimble House, but I'd already signed a contract with Lady Blue, so I had to send them a message saying, I'm sorry, you can't publish it. But
Next one.
Not a bad feeling, though.
not a
Yeah,
bad feeling.
boy.
No, it was good.
Cadillac problems.
But it definitely got rejections, too. I think I sent it out to like 10 different publishers, something like that. But yeah, so
Those fools.
Yeah, but 2
I
out of
know,
10,
right?
that's great.
Pretty good batting average.
Yeah.
thanks.
Did you struggle with one of the things that I was thinking about when I read it is that it's genre for sure. It's horror. It falls under that horror comedy category, but it's a very powerful story. It's definitely got a strong message, and you can read it as literary fiction as well. Did you have a problem trying to figure out how you would pitch it to publishers?
Yeah, I did. I really, really struggled with writing my little query letter, what to say in it, what not to say. I think I wound up just sort of giving a very brief overview of it and saying that I called it a ghost story, I think is what I called it. I don't think I pigeonholed it as like comedy or horror. I think I just left it at ghost story and let them make of that what they will.
And did you match the tone of the book to the query letter?
I tried to.
You tried to, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's so strong, I imagine that's something that would sell it really quickly.
I hope it did. I hope they liked my query. But so yeah,
Well, you
I
did
tried to
something
make it.
right.
Yeah, I mean,
that
they liked it,
that would
so-
work.
Yeah.
Your query letter starts with, so have you ever watched Judge Judy?
Well, thank you for coming in, Dana. This has been great.
Thanks for having me.
So where can people find you, find the book?
Sure. So I have my website, which is danahammer.com, hammer like the tool. I also have my author page on Facebook, Dana Hammer author page. I'm technically on Twitter, but I don't use it because I hate it. But you can find me there if you really look. And that's about it. I will update my website once I know all of the channels that Tom the Ghost will be available on. I know it'll be available on the Lady Blue publishing website, and I'm sure it'll be on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all those
And
standards.
And you'll send us the link, and we'll link it here at the Genre Hustle as soon as it's available.
Perfect. And hopefully it'll be coming to a bookstore near you.
That's right. And the dozens and dozens of our fans can come and find you. The dozens of our listeners.
If you bring it to me in Anaheim, I'll sign it for you.
Whoa.
there you
know, this is going out live. You should.
There's a reason to go to Anaheim.
Yeah, there's a
for
reason.
sure.
You're going to have
I mean,
lines.
aside from
trip.
Disneyland. Yeah.
Well, all right. That's it. This has been the Genre Hustle. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.